Valentine, you've spoken out very bravely about your own campaign within your own family to stop girls being cut, your own nieces. Will you tell us about that?
Yes, last year was an absolutely brilliant year for me as a campaign against female genital mutilation. In my family, all my grandmothers, my mother, and all my sisters went through the practice, and I was forced to go through it at the age of 11, and I was the last girl in my family to go through it. And at the beginning of last year, my mother told me that she wanted my younger brother to be circumcised. And to me, I know how it happens in my Maasai community, where if boys are ready to be circumcised and there are girls who've reached the age of being circumcised, that will actually happen at the same time. And when my mother told me that, I said, Mom, I want you to be really honest with me. Are you planning to cut the girls as well? And she said, I'm not in a position to give you an answer. And I said, why are you not in a position to give me an answer? She said, why are you asking? You've gone through it, so it shouldn't be a problem for them to go through it. And again, you can speak to their mothers and their fathers. And I took that as a challenge because I knew this is something that has happened over generations and we've all gone through it. So I picked up the phone and I started with my brother and I said, I'm really sorry, I'm going to talk about a really weird topic, and I'm going to talk about FGM. And I told him about the complications that comes with FGM. And he said, so how will she grow up in this community if she's not cut? And I said, I've told you the consequences. Do you want your daughter to go through it? And he said, I've never actually understood it because we've never spoken about it. And he said, I'm not going to allow my daughter to go through it. And then I spoke to my sisters and explained the same thing. And one of my sisters had actually had problems with miscarriages. And the issue was she never actually understood that was as a result of going through FGM. And when I explained everything, she said she was going to think about it. And then my mother said, you also need to tell your uncles because this is a community thing. And I picked up the phone, tried to speak to my uncles. It was really difficult. And this is a subject that is, not really easy to to talk about. And I said, I'm really pleading with you, please don't let this happen. It took me a couple of months to actually convince people back home. But with education and trying to help people about the complications that come with FGM, my 4 daughters and my 4 nieces are now safe. And it actually makes me feel like it's possible to actually eradicate FGM in a generation.
It's an extraordinary story. The question that your brother asked you was, how will my daughter live in this community if she isn't like everybody else, like all other women? And what's the answer to that?
It's difficult sometimes to explain these things, but the way I told him was, if you really love your daughter and you really want her to have a good life, the long-term consequences of FGM are actually worse than her not fitting into the community. And I actually said, in Kenya it's illegal and you can actually go to prison by doing it. And you can actually protect your own daughter. And the best thing to do is you can start talking as well about this and explaining to people why you don't want your daughter to be cut.
So the report that came out today is still reporting an incredibly high prevalence of this practice, or people suffering the consequences of this practice in the UK by the local authority. What would you like to see as a result of these figures published today?
I think there's a lot that needs to be done, and first of all, the local authorities need to work closely with the community and the police as well to have a centralized, way of dealing with these things, where people know, in case there is a problem, where they can go, the numbers they can ring, the kind of support that is available. And also to give resources to people within the community who are trying to to tackle this issue, because that has been a big challenge for most of the campaigners I've actually interacted with. And for me personally, supporting and empowering the survivors is absolutely paramount in dealing with them with FGM. These are women who've gone through the pain. These are women who are living with the consequences of FGM. And a good example, I've never had, a child myself. I would want to have children. Every time I imagine, the complications that other people have gone through, the psychological impact of that really makes you worry, because you're like, how will it be like? But if there is enough support to help the survivors, that would be absolutely brilliant. And also trying to educate the communities on the impact of FGM.
It worked in your family because of your powerful advocacy. Do you think there are enough people within communities out there battling against their friends, their families, their neighbours, saying this isn't right?
I've managed to do it, but I can't say it was easy. I had a couple of times where I broke down trying to plead with people, saying, please don't do it. I know how this feels. But it takes courage to be able to do it. And with a few survivors who are comfortable talking about it, if we empower ourselves and create something like a survivors club where we can empower each other, talk about the issues we face and how we can actually educate our communities. It can only start with one person, but that can spread, and together we can actually make FGM end in a generation.